Functions or methods are declared with the keyword func, F-U-N-C, the name of your function, a list of parameters inside parentheses, and those parameters are in the form of a constant name, colon, and its data type, and you have multiple parameters and separate them with a comma. Then you specify the return type by using a hyphen greater than symbol to create an arrow, return type, and then your curly brackets to enclose the body. If you're returning a value, if your return type is not void, then you must have a return statement that returns a value of the data type that you specified. So let's create a simple little function here. I'm going to create a function called cube. I'm going to pass it a value of I, which will be an integer, and we'll return an integer. And all I'm going to do here is return a times a times a. So we're going to return a cubed, and then let's call that. So I'll have a variable, let's call it xyz, equals cube. Let's pass it a value of 3. And you see the value it gets is 27. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. Now the value a there is a constant. It's not a variable, and if I wanted to create a similar function, let's call this one cubit, and we'll do a as an integer again. I'm going to return an integer. A times equals a times a. So I'll multiply a by a times a, or a cubed. And then I want to return a. I get an error. And the error says I cannot invoke multiplication operation with an argument of type int. Now that's because my int here is a constant and not a variable. But I can make it a variable by adding the var keyword, and that causes the error to go away. And now I could say xyz equals cubit, and let's pass it 4 this time. So 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. Okay, I might also want to pass a value as a parameter by reference. So passing an argument by reference, and to receive that, we use the in-out modifier. So I'm going to create another function. We'll call this one by ref test. And we'll take in-out, I'm going to do ABC as an integer, and we'll have it return an int. And my function here is going to be ABC times equals 2. So I'm going to change the value of ABC, or that value is being passed, changing the argument. So the argument itself will end up multiplying, as does the parameter here, by 2. And I'm going to return ABC. Okay, so let's call this function. We'll do a variable a equals 10, and a variable b equals, and here I'm going to call my by ref test. I'm going to pass it the value of a. Now when I pass a value by reference, I need to precede it with an ampersand. So it's going to be ampersand a. Then let's just simply print out our value using a print line. And we'll say a equals the value of a, and b equals, and I want the value of B. And I've got a little error here, and I didn't capitalize the T in test. And there we go. So A is 10, B becomes 20 because we're passing 10 into ABC. ABC is multiplied by 2, and that's what we're returning. So B takes on the value of 20, 2 times 10. But notice in our print line, A is also 20 because since we passed this by reference, not only is ABC being multiplied by 2, but so is the variable it references, which is A. So A becomes 20. Optionally, we can provide names for our parameters as well as default values. To save a little time here, I'm just going to paste in some code that I wrote earlier. And I have here a function called calcTaxes with a variable A, which takes a double, and I gave it a name of purchase, and then variable B, actually a constant, these are constants, so constant A, constant B, which is a double, I give it a optional name of tax rate, and so for tax rate I assign it a default value of 6.5 or 6.5%. I'm going to return a string in this particular function. So here's what it does. Now, to get the currency style, I'm referring to the NS number formatter, which is from Objective-C. So I'm creating a variable fs, which is taking on that NS number formatter object, and then I can set the number style of fs to a currency style. I have a variable named tax, which takes the A times the tax rate and dividing by 100, and then return that using that fs object, calling string from number and passing tax. It's going to return a currency style. And so what's happening here, when I call this, the first time I call it, I'm going to pass it using those optional names, a purchase value, so I used $100, and my tax rate that I'm specifying is 7.2%. And you'll see the tax would be $7.20. The second time I call it here, I didn't provide the tax rate. I just simply provided the purchase, same price as $100. But because I didn't provide a tax rate, it's going to use the default of 6.5 and divide the return to $6.50. All right, let me paste in another piece of code. And here I'm going to pass a tuple argument into a function. Now I'm getting an error here because I have XYZ declared elsewhere. So let's just change this to ZYX. Now I'll get rid of the errors. So my function here of getAverage, I've got a parameter list or a parameter of XYZ. Now this is a local XYZ, so it's not conflicting with our globally declared XYZ that we used earlier. And its data type is a tuple of int, comma, int, comma, int, comma, int, comma, int. There's 5 ints there. And the idea here is I'm going to pass it 5 values that are integers as a tuple, and it's going to return a double value. It's simply going to take the average of those 5 values. So I have a variable called sum that's adding those all together, and here I'm using the dot integer or dot index notation for XYZ. So XYZ sub dot 0 plus XYZ dot 1 and so forth to get XYZ dot 4. Then my average is going to be that sum, which I'm going to convert to a double value and divide by 5.0 and then return the average. So when I call that function, I'm creating a tuple here first of ZYX, gave it 5 integers, and then I've got another variable called, in this case, XYZ average. I'm going to pass it ZYX to the getAverage function. And so these 5 values, 5, 8, 14, 23, and 15, go into XYZ.0, XYZ.1, XYZ.2, and so forth. Going to sum that together, divide by 5.0, return the average, and the average here is 13. just happen to come out to be an integer value. If I change one of these, say, to 17, now it's 13.4. So that's a little trick in terms of passing tuples. We have to specify the data types of the tuple within our parameter list. Well, in the same vein, we can return a tuple from a function. Let me paste in another snippet of code here. So here I have a function called calcsales. It's going to receive a tuple of 3 doubles, and then it's going to return a tuple of string, string, and string, and I gave those names here of subtotal, taxes, and total. So let's look at calling this. So I've got purchases. So these are 3 items we're going to buy for $23.99, $8.49, $17.99. And I'm going to pass those purchases to calcsales and put those in a variable called bill. So it's going to pass $23.99 into XYZ sub 0, $8.49 XYZ dot 1, and $17.99 in XYZ dot 2. So I'm getting the sum of those 3 values. I'm going to take that sum, multiply it by my tax rate, and I just assumed here a tax rate of 6.5%. Use that NS number formatter again so I can get my currency style because I am returning strings here. And then I'm going to figure out the sum string. My variable sum string is going to be the sum formatted to currency. Tax string is the tax calculation formatted to currency. And my total string are those 2 added together, also formatted for currency. And then I'm returning those 3 values: sum string, tax string, and total string. That's my tuple. After I've called that, I can then take that value of bill and I can use bill.subtotal. So my subtotal of those 3 values is $50.47. 6.5% of that in terms of taxes is going to be $3.28. And then my total, and just for an example here, rather than using the total name, I use .2. So you can use .0, .1, .2, or you could use subtotal, taxes, or total here. So my total, which is the tax and the subtotal added together, and I just notice I have one little mistake here. This should be taxes. So my taxes were $3.28. The total is $53.75. So that's how we can return a tuple from a function. Very cool feature to be able to return multiple values from a function.